The massive alien ship moved slowly toward Earth's orbital station. Its hull gleamed silver against the black of space, covered in strange symbols that seemed to glow with their own light. Inside the ship, Captain Zethkar checked his instruments. One more time. His scaled hands moved carefully over the controls as his reptilian eyes studied the readings. "Are you certain these humans are safe to approach?" asked Commander Veltar, a tall being with 4 arms and skin like blue crystal. "The reports say their planet is a Class 12 death world." Zethkar's throat pouch inflated slightly, a sign of nervousness among his people. "The Galactic Council has approved this mission. We must welcome them into the Federation regardless of their origin world." Through the viewport, they could see the human space station growing larger. It looked crude compared to Federation technology, built from metal and ceramic instead of the elegant biomaterials most civilizations preferred. Worse, it was spinning through a field of debris that would have sent most pilots into panic. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the humans," reported the communications officer, a small furry creature with large ears. "Put it through," Zethkar ordered. A human face appeared on the screen. The being had dark hair and brown eyes with a wide smile that showed white teeth. "Welcome to Earth orbit. I'm Commander Jake Martinez of the Earth Defense Corps. We're honored to meet you." Several alien crew members stepped back from the screen. The human's smile looked predatory to them, showing far too many teeth. Among most galactic species, such displays meant aggression or threat. "Greetings, Commander Martinez," Zethkar replied carefully. "I am Captain Zethkar of the Federation vessel Harmony's Edge. We come to welcome your species into our community." Jake's grin grew wider. "Outstanding. Fair warning, though. We've had some debris impacts on the docking bay today. Nothing serious? Just some chunks of old satellites moving at about 15,000 miles per hour. Should make docking interesting." The bridge fell silent. Every alien present stared at the screen in horror. Debris moving at such speeds would tear through most Federation ships like paper. Yet this human spoke of it as if it were a minor inconvenience. "Perhaps we should wait for the debris field to clear," suggested Zethkar, his voice tight with worry. Jake laughed, a sound that made several aliens jump. "No need. Our pilots thread this needle twice a day. My daughter actually set the speed record last week, docked during a meteor shower. Kids these days, right?" The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Zethkar looked at his crew, seeing his own fear reflected in their faces. What kind of species lived so casually with such danger? 20 minutes later, they docked with the human station. The process involved navigating through spinning metal fragments while the station itself rotated at speeds that would make most beings sick. Yet the human pilot guides made it look simple, even calling out cheerful warnings about incoming chunks of space junk. Commander Jake Martinez met them at the airlock. He was tall for a human, wearing a simple blue uniform with metal badges. Behind him stood a woman with blonde hair tied back in a neat style. "Captain, welcome aboard Freedom 1, Jake said, extending his hand in the human greeting gesture. "This is Dr. Lisa Park, our head of xenobiology." Zethkar carefully took the offered hand, trying not to think about the crushing strength these death world creatures might possess. To his surprise, the grip was firm but not painful. "Your station is impressive," Zethkar said, looking around the docking bay. The walls were lined with equipment he didn't recognize, and humans moved about their tasks with easy confidence. "Thanks. We built her in about 8 months," Jake replied. "Had to work around the radiation storms and solar flares, but nothing our crews couldn't handle." Dr. Lisa smiled, another unsettling display of teeth. "We're excited to learn about galactic civilization. Our scientists have so many questions about other species and their worlds." As they walked through the station corridors, Zethkar noticed something disturbing. The humans they passed were all relaxed and happy, despite living in what any sane being would consider a death trap. Children ran through the halls laughing as if they weren't spinning through space surrounded by deadly debris. "Tell me about your homeworld," requested Veltar, his crystalline features reflecting the station's lights. The Federation survey classified it as uninhabitable. Jake and Lisa exchanged a look that Zethkar was beginning to recognize. It was The expression humans made when they found something amusing that others took seriously. Earth's got its challenges, Lisa admitted. Earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, volcanic eruptions, ice ages, plague outbreaks, massive wars, the usual. Stuff? Usual? Veltar's voice cracked. Those are extinction-level events. Well, yeah, they've killed millions of us over the years, Jake said with a shrug. But life goes on. We rebuild, adapt, learn from it. My hometown gets hit by tornadoes every few years. Great-grandma used to joke that the storms were just nature's way of keeping us sharp. The alien delegation looked at each other in growing alarm. These humans spoke of planetary disasters the way normal beings discussed weather patterns. They entered a conference room where more humans waited. A man with gray hair stood as they approached. This is General Bob Harrison, head of our military forces, Jake introduced. General, the Federation has prepared a standard integration program for your species, Zethkar began. It's designed to help new civilizations adjust to galactic society safely. General Harrison raised an eyebrow. What kind of adjustment? Peaceful colonies on safe worlds, protection from hostile species, guidance in dangerous technologies, Zethkar explained. Most new species require considerable support before they can handle the risks of space travel. The humans looked at each other, and Zethkar saw that expression again. The one that suggested they found something funny. That's very kind, Dr. Lisa said carefully, but we were thinking we might be more useful in exploration or defense roles. We're used to handling dangerous situations. The alien delegates recoiled. Defense roles meant combat, conflict, violence. Such duties were reserved for the most hardened warrior species, not newcomers who needed protection. Perhaps you don't understand the dangers involved, Veltar said. There are hostile species out there, worlds that could kill you in minutes, situations that have destroyed entire civilizations. General Harrison leaned back in his chair. Sir, with respect, we've been dealing with hostile neighbors and deadly environments for our entire history. Last century alone, we survived 2 global wars, developed weapons that could destroy our own planet, and somehow managed not to wipe ourselves out. How dangerous could space be? The conference room fell silent except for the gentle hum of the station's life support systems. Outside the viewport, chunks of debris continued to drift past at lethal speeds while humans went about their daily lives, apparently unconcerned. Captain Zethkar realized they might need to completely reconsider their approach to humanity. These weren't a typical pre-spaceflight species requiring careful guidance. These were survivors from a world so hostile, it had forged them into something the galaxy had never seen before. The question was whether that made them the Federation's greatest asset or its most dangerous threat. 3 days after the first meeting, Captain Zethkar sat in his private quarters staring at the reports from the Federation Council. The messages were all the same. Fear, concern, demands for more information about these strange humans who laughed at danger. A soft chime indicated someone at his door. Enter, he called. Commander Veltar stepped inside, his blue crystalline skin reflecting the soft lights. Behind him came Dr. Yathara, the expedition's chief psychologist, her tentacles writhing with obvious stress. Captain, we need to discuss the human situation, Veltar said. The council is asking difficult questions. Dr. Yathara's large eyes blinked rapidly. They want to know if humans are psychologically stable. Some council members think they might be a warrior race pretending to be peaceful. Zethkar nodded. He had been expecting this. What do you recommend? We need to understand their history, Dr. Yathara replied. How they developed this strange relationship with danger. I suggest we request a full briefing on human civilization. The next morning, they returned to the human station. Commander Jake Martinez met them with the same unsettling smile, but this time he brought someone new. This is Dr. Kevin Brown, our military historian, Jake said. He's prepared a presentation about human development. Dr. Brown was older than Jake, with gray hair and kind eyes behind wire glasses. He led them to a large room with a wall-sized screen. The alien delegation took their seats, trying not to think about how the room was spinning through space at dangerous speeds. I understand you want to learn about human history, Dr. Brown began. I'll start with our early development. The screen lit up with images of Earth's continents, green and brown land masses surrounded by blue oceans. It looked peaceful enough, though Zethkar noticed several red spots marking active volcanoes. About 200,000 years ago, early humans lived in Africa, Dr. Brown explained. The climate was stable there with plenty of food and water. But then some groups decided to leave. Dr. Yathara leaned forward. Leave? Why would they abandon a safe environment? Dr. Brown smiled. That's a good question. They walked north, into deserts, crossed frozen lands, sailed across dangerous oceans. Many died, but some survived. Within 50,000 years, humans had spread to every continent except Antarctica. The screen showed migration paths across the world. Arrows traced routes through mountain ranges across vast deserts over stormy seas. Several alien delegates made worried sounds. They chose to enter hostile environments? Veltar asked. Voluntarily? That's right. When the ice ages came, humans didn't hide or die out. They learned to make fire, build shelters, hunt large predators. They turned the ice age into an opportunity to explore new lands. Commander Zethkar felt his throat pouch inflate. His people had barely survived one climate change on their homeworld. These humans had lived through dozens and used them to spread across their planet. Now let me tell you about human conflicts, Dr. Brown continued. The screen changed to show armies of humans fighting each other. Metal weapons, horses, cannons. The images grew more complex and deadly as time passed. This is the Battle of Gettysburg, during our Civil War. About 50,000 casualties in 3 days. Dr. Brown said calmly. Dr. Yathara made a choking sound. 50,000? In 3 days? That was just one battle. The whole war lasted 4 years and killed over 600,000 people, but it was far from our largest conflict. The images shifted to show massive armies, tanks, airplanes dropping bombs, cities in ruins, soldiers fighting in muddy trenches. World War I lasted 4 years and killed about 17 million people. World War II was even bigger, over 70 million dead, entire cities destroyed by single bombs. 3 alien delegates had to leave the room. The others sat in stunned silence. Wars on their worlds lasted hours or days, with casualties in the hundreds. These numbers were beyond their understanding. You fought wars lasting years? Zethkar whispered. With millions of deaths? We've had conflicts lasting decades. Some went on for over 100 years, Dr. Brown replied. The strange part is, we were fighting ourselves. Humans killing other humans over territory, resources, ideas. A new voice spoke from the doorway. May I add something? Everyone turned to see a woman with short brown hair wearing a simple dress. Dr. Brown nodded. This is Dr. Amy White, our social anthropologist, he said. Dr. Amy smiled at the aliens, though several flinched at the sight of her teeth. I study how humans live together. Dr. Brown told you about our wars, but I want to talk about how we survive disasters. The screen changed again, showing images of destruction. Earthquakes that toppled buildings, hurricanes that flooded entire cities, volcanoes that buried towns in ash. This is San Francisco after the 1906 earthquake, Amy explained. The city was destroyed. Over 3,000 people died. So we rebuilt it. In the same place. On the same fault line. You rebuilt in the same location? Veltar asked in disbelief. Of course. It's our city. We improved the buildings, made them stronger, prepared for the next earthquake. Because we knew there would be a next one. More images flashed by. Cities hit by hurricanes, rebuilt exactly where they were. Towns destroyed by tornadoes, reconstructed on the same spots. Villages buried by volcanic ash, then re-established nearby. Humans don't abandon places because they're dangerous, Amy continued. We adapt to them. My grandmother lived through the Dust Bowl, when drought and storms destroyed farmland across the American Midwest. Millions of people could have left. Some did. But most stayed and learned better farming methods. Dr. Yathara's tentacles were writhing frantically. Don't you have safe places on your world? Somewhere free from these disasters? Amy and Dr. Brown looked at each other and smiled that strange human smile. Not really, Amy said. The East Coast gets hurricanes. The West Coast gets earthquakes. The Middle gets tornadoes. The North gets blizzards. The South gets floods. We've got active volcanoes, fault lines, areas that flood every spring, deserts, swamps full of dangerous animals. So where do you live? Dr. Yathara asked desperately. Everywhere, Dr. Brown replied. We live in all those places. We've built cities on earthquake faults, in hurricane zones, next to active volcanoes. The most dangerous places on Earth often have the most people. But why? Zethkar demanded. Why choose to live with such risks? Amy shrugged. Because that's where the good farmland is, or the harbors, or the trade routes, or because it's beautiful, or because our families have lived there for generations. Danger is just part of life. You learn to deal with it. The room fell silent except for the sound of Dr. Yathara's rapid breathing. Finally, she spoke in a shaking voice. Your entire species has been living under constant threat of death for thousands of years? Tens of thousands, Dr. Brown corrected, gently. Maybe hundreds of thousands. It's hard to say exactly when it started. And this is normal for you? Amy nodded. It's just how things are. Every human child grows up knowing that bad things happen. Storms, accidents, diseases, wars. But life goes on. You do your best, help your neighbors, and laugh when you can. Captain Zethkar stood up slowly. His legs felt weak, and his scales had gone pale. I think we need some time to process this information. As the alien delegation left the briefing room, they could hear human laughter echoing from somewhere in the station. The sound that had once seemed merely strange now filled them with deep unease. These weren't just survivors from a dangerous world. They were a species that had been shaped by constant catastrophe into something the galaxy had never seen before. The question was no longer whether humans could handle galactic dangers. The question was whether the galaxy could handle humans. Admiral Susan Clark stood in the training facility aboard the human military station Victory Base. She wore a simple green uniform with silver stars on her shoulders. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her blue eyes held the steady look of someone who had seen many battles. Across from her stood Commander Krexthal of the Crystalline Guard, the Federation's most elite military unit. His body was made of living crystal that shifted colors from blue to purple as he moved. Behind him were 6 other crystalline warriors, each one a veteran of dozens of conflicts across the galaxy. Admiral Clark, we appreciate this opportunity to train with human forces, Commander Krexthal said. His voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The Federation Council believes joint exercises will help our species work together. Susan nodded. Happy to help. We've set up a basic urban combat scenario. Nothing too challenging. In the observation deck above, Captain Zethkar and the alien delegation watched through protective windows. Dr. Yathara had her recording devices ready, hoping to understand how humans functioned in dangerous situations. Basic scenario, Veltar whispered. Look at that training ground. Below them stretched a mock city filled with buildings, vehicles, and obstacles. Smoke drifted from several locations where small fires burned. The sound of distant explosions echoed through the facility. Attention all units, a voice announced over the speakers. Exercise begins in 60 seconds. Objective is to secure the downtown area and rescue civilians trapped in the central building. Live ammunition will be used. Medic teams are standing by. Commander Krexthal's crystal body flickered with alarm. Live ammunition? Surely that's a mistake. Sergeant Mike Johnson walked up to them, checking his rifle. He was a stocky man with dark skin and bright white teeth. No mistake. Can't train properly with fake rounds. Don't worry, though. We'll try. Not to shoot you. Mike laughed at his own joke, but the crystalline warriors stepped back nervously. Several other human soldiers gathered around them, all carrying weapons and wearing armor. They looked relaxed and happy, as if they were going to a party instead of a battle simulation. 30 seconds, the announcer called. Remember, called out Corporal Jenny Adams, a young woman with red hair tied in braids. Last team to the objective buys drinks tonight. The human soldiers cheered and laughed. The crystalline guard looked at each other with growing worry. These humans were treating a combat exercise like a game. 10 seconds. Good luck and try not to die. The buzzer sounded and chaos erupted. Human soldiers scattered in all directions, moving with practiced speed through the mock city. Gunfire crackled as they engaged targets that popped up from windows and doorways. Explosions shook the ground as they dealt with simulated roadside bombs. The crystalline guard tried to follow, but they moved cautiously, checking each corner carefully before advancing. Their crystal bodies could deflect most weapons, but they had been trained to avoid unnecessary risks. "Contact left," shouted Mike Johnson as targets appeared from a building. He and 2 other soldiers immediately charged toward the gunfire instead of taking cover. "Are they insane?" Commander Krexthal asked, watching the humans run directly into danger. "They should establish a perimeter and call for support." From the observation deck, Captain Zethkar watched in fascination and horror. The humans moved through the battlefield like they belonged there. When simulated artillery rounds exploded nearby, they barely flinched. When enemy targets shot at them, they laughed and shot back. "There." Jenny Adams pointed at a building where sparks indicated electrical problems. "Looks like the power's out. Perfect place for an ambush." Instead of avoiding the building, she ran straight toward it. 2 other soldiers followed her, all of them grinning. The crystalline warriors tried to keep up, but their careful, methodical approach left them far behind the fast-moving humans. When a simulated sniper started shooting from a rooftop, the crystal beings immediately sought cover and began planning a careful response. The humans handled it differently. "Sniper on the roof," called Private Dan Ross, a tall man with blonde hair. "I got him." Dan sprinted across open ground while bullets cracked around him, laughing as he dodged left and right. He reached the building and began climbing the outside, while using nothing but window ledges and decorative stonework. "He's climbing a building under fire," Dr. Yathara gasped from the observation deck. "That's tactically impossible." "Apparently not," Veltar replied weakly. The exercise continued for 20 minutes. The humans reached their objectives, rescued the simulated civilians, and eliminated all threats. They did it while joking with each other, sharing stories, and treating the whole thing like an entertaining challenge. The Crystalline Guard, despite their superior technology and combat training, were still trying to clear the first building when the exercise ended. "Not bad for a warm-up," Mike Johnson said as he walked over to the Crystal Warriors. His uniform was torn and dirty, but he looked completely unharmed and very happy. "Warm-up?" Commander Krexthal's voice cracked. "That was the most intensive combat scenario I've ever experienced." Jenny Adams jogged over, her red hair escaping from its braids. "Really? This was pretty easy. No chemical attacks, no artillery barrages, no building collapses. My little brother's video games are more challenging than this." "The Crystalline," Commander stared at her. "Your juvenile sibling engages in more dangerous activities than elite military training?" "Well, yeah. Kids today play games where they fight aliens, zombies, robots, you name it. Some of those scenarios would give real soldiers nightmares," Jenny replied cheerfully. Dr. Peter Green, the human military psychologist, approached the group. He was a thin man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "How did everyone feel about the exercise?" he asked. "Terrifying," admitted one of the Crystalline Warriors. "I've never experienced such intense combat pressure." "Interesting." Dr. Green made notes on his tablet. "Mike, how about you?" "Pretty relaxing, actually," Mike replied. "Reminded me of stories my grandfather used to tell about Korea. He always said real combat was scarier than any training, but at least in training you know it's going to end." Jenny nodded. "My great-grandmother survived the London Blitz during World War II. She used to say that after months of nightly bombing raids, everything else seemed easy. She'd probably think this exercise was boring." Commander Krexthal looked confused. "Your ancestors faced worse situations than this?" "Oh, sure," Mike said casually. "My family's got stories going back generations. Great-great-grandfather fought. In the Civil War, great-grandfather was at Normandy Beach, grandfather in Vietnam. They all said the same thing. You do what you have to do, help your buddies, and try to find something to laugh about." "You laughed during combat?" the Crystalline commander asked in disbelief. Jenny grinned. It helps with the stress. Plus, if you're not having at least a little fun, what's the point? From the observation deck, the alien delegation watched this conversation with growing alarm. Dr. Yithara's tentacles were writhing frantically as she tried to process what she was seeing. They treat warfare as entertainment, she whispered. They've been bred by their world to find joy in situations that would destroy other species mentally. Captain Zethkar nodded slowly. And they come from families with generations of combat experience. Their children grow up hearing war stories as bedtime tales. The exercise concluded with human soldiers helping the shaken crystalline warriors back to the staging area. The humans were offering encouragement, sharing water, and telling jokes to lighten the mood. They showed genuine concern for their alien allies, but seemed completely unaware of how disturbing their casual attitude toward danger appeared to others. Admiral Clark, Commander Krexthal said as they prepared to leave, "May I ask how your soldiers maintain such calm in dangerous situations?" Susan smiled. "Practice, I suppose. Plus, compared to what our ancestors went through, this is relatively safe. We've got medical teams standing by, safety protocols, modern equipment. Great-grandfather would have called this a vacation compared to Stalingrad." As the alien delegation returned to their ship, they carried with them a new understanding of humanity. These weren't just survivors from a dangerous world. They were the products of countless generations who had faced impossible odds and somehow found reasons to smile about it. The galaxy had never seen anything like them before, and many species were beginning to wonder if that was a good thing or the most terrifying development in galactic history. The Federation medical ship Healing Light docked with the human station 3 days later. Chief Psychologist Vorthon stepped out of the airlock with shaking legs. His pale blue skin had turned almost white with stress, and his large black eyes darted nervously around the docking bay. Vorthon belonged to the Mentari race, beings who could sense the emotions and thoughts of other species. The Federation had sent him to evaluate human mental health before approving their membership. What he discovered would haunt him for the rest of his life. Commander Jake Martinez greeted him with the usual human smile. "Welcome aboard, Doctor. We're ready for your evaluation." Vorthon tried to smile back, but the effort made his facial muscles twitch. Already he could feel the strange emotional energy radiating from the humans around him. Where most species projected fear, anxiety, or caution, these beings radiated something he had never encountered before, calm acceptance mixed with barely contained excitement, as if they were always ready for something dangerous to happen. "I understand you want to test our psychological stability," Jake said as they walked through the station corridors. "We've arranged for you to interview people from different backgrounds. The first interview was with Mrs. Carol Smith, a teacher at one of the station's schools. She was a middle-aged woman with gray hair and kind eyes wearing a simple blue dress. Vorthon expected this to be the easiest conversation. "Tell me about your work," Vorthon said, settling into his chair and opening his recording device. Carol smiled. "I teach 3rd grade, 8 and 9-year-olds. They're wonderful children, very bright and curious." "What subjects do you teach?" "The usual things: reading, writing, mathematics, history, science. We also have safety drills." Vorthon leaned forward with interest. "Safety drills? Oh yes. Fire drills, earthquake drills, active shooter drills, spacesuit emergency procedures. The children need to know what to do if something goes wrong." The psychologist's pale skin turned even whiter. "Active shooter drills? You train children to deal with armed attackers?" Carol nodded as if this was perfectly normal. "We've been doing those for decades back on Earth. Children need to know how to hide, stay quiet, or run if someone dangerous enters their school. It's just basic safety, like teaching them to look both ways before crossing a street." Vorthon's empathic abilities let him sense Carol's emotions as she spoke. She felt no fear, no trauma, no stress about these drills. To her, preparing children for violent death was as routine as teaching them to tie their shoes. "Have you ever experienced such an attack yourself?" he asked weakly. "Not personally, but my sister's school had one when she was teaching. 3 people died before the police stopped the shooter. She was back at work the next week. Said the children needed her to be strong." The interview continued for another hour. Carol described teaching children about natural disasters, space emergencies, and how to help injured people. She spoke of field trips to places that would terrify most galactic citizens and treated it all as normal educational experience. By the time she left, Vorthan needed medical attention. The station's human doctor gave him something for his headache and suggested he rest before the next interview. The second interview was with firefighter Danny Rodriguez. He was a large man with dark hair and strong hands, wearing a red uniform with reflective stripes. He brought with him the scent of smoke and chemicals. "How long have you been a firefighter?" Vorthan asked, trying to prepare himself mentally. 15 years. Started right out of high school. Danny replied with obvious pride. "Why did you choose this profession?" Danny grinned. "My dad was a firefighter, and his dad before him. It's a family tradition. Plus, I like helping people and I don't mind the danger." Vorthan felt his empathic senses reeling. This human actually enjoyed running into burning buildings. The emotion radiating from Danny wasn't bravery or duty. It was genuine enthusiasm for life-threatening situations. "Describe a typical emergency call," Vorthan requested. "Well, last week we had a chemical plant fire. Toxic fumes, explosions going off every few minutes, building about to collapse. We went in anyway to make sure no one was trapped inside." Danny's emotions during the story were completely calm, even happy. He described walking through an environment that would kill most species in minutes, and he felt the same way other beings might feel about a pleasant walk in a park. "Weren't you afraid?" Vorthan whispered. "Sure, a little. Fear keeps you sharp, helps you make good decisions. But I've been in worse situations. My grandfather was a firefighter during the London Blitz. He used to tell stories about putting out fires while bombs were falling around him. Compared to that, a chemical plant fire is pretty manageable." The interview ended with Vorthan requiring emergency treatment for stress-induced paralysis. His nervous system simply couldn't process the concept of beings who voluntarily entered deadly situations for fun. The third interview nearly broke him completely. Police. Officer Maria Lopez sat across from him wearing a dark blue uniform with a metal badge. She was young, maybe 30 years old, with bright eyes and a confident smile. "I chose police work because I wanted to make a difference," she explained. "My neighborhood had problems with gangs, drugs, violence. I decided to do something about it." "And this involved placing yourself in danger?" Vorthan asked, his voice shaking. "Of course. You can't stop dangerous people by avoiding them. Last month I chased an armed robber through downtown traffic. The week before that, I had to talk a suicidal man off a bridge. Yesterday I arrested someone who was threatening his family with a knife." Maria's emotional state was the most disturbing yet. She genuinely enjoyed the challenge of dangerous situations, not the violence itself, but the test of her skills and courage. She felt the same satisfaction catching criminals that other species might feel solving puzzles. "How do you cope with the stress?" Vorthan managed to ask. "Stress? It's exciting more than stressful. My great-grandmother lived through the Great Depression and World War II. She always said that if you survived one day, you could probably survive the next. She taught me that problems are just opportunities to prove how strong you are." Vorthan tried to schedule an interview with a combat veteran, but the meeting never happened. Staff Sergeant Tony Garcia began telling stories about his time in various conflicts, and within 5 minutes Vorthan suffered a complete mental breakdown. The empathic psychologist's mind simply couldn't handle the emotional resonance of someone who had experienced real warfare and emerged not just sane but somehow stronger. Tony's casual discussion of battles, explosions, and death, while maintaining perfect psychological balance, was beyond anything in Vorthan's experience. Medical teams from 3 different species worked for hours to stabilize Vorthan's condition. When he finally recovered enough to speak, his first words were a whispered request to be taken far away from the humans. Dr. Yathara found him in the medical bay of the Federation ship, staring at the wall with empty eyes. "What did you discover?" she asked gently. Vorthan turned to look at her, his expression haunted. "They're not insane," he whispered. "That's what makes it so terrifying. They're completely rational beings who have been shaped by their environment into something that shouldn't be possible." "What do you mean?" Every human I interviewed had experienced trauma that would destroy most species, but instead of breaking them, it made them stronger. They've developed psychological mechanisms that let them not just survive impossible situations, but thrive in them. Vorthan sat up slowly, his hands trembling. Their children practice for violent death the way our children practice mathematics. Their emergency workers volunteer to enter situations that would be considered execution methods on other worlds. Their soldiers come from families with generations of combat experience. So they are a warrior race? Dr. Yathara asked. No, Vorthan replied, his voice filled with awe and terror. They're something much more dangerous. They're a species that has learned to find joy in surviving the impossible. They don't fight because they're aggressive. They fight because they've discovered that the things which should destroy them actually make them feel alive. He closed his eyes and shuddered. The galaxy has never seen anything like them. I'm not sure it's ready for what they represent. In his official report to the Federation Council, Chief Psychologist Vorthan recommended that humans be classified as psychologically incompatible with standard galactic civilization, not because they were unstable, but because they were so stable in the face of chaos that they might represent a fundamental threat to the peaceful order that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. The question was no longer whether humans could adapt to galactic society. The question was whether galactic society could survive the arrival of a species that laughed in the face of everything the galaxy feared most. The Galactic Federation Council chamber was the largest enclosed space most beings had ever seen. Representatives from 47 different species sat in curved rows that stretched up toward a domed ceiling painted with stars. The air hummed, with nervous energy as translators worked to convert dozens of languages into something everyone could understand. At the center of the chamber stood a holographic display showing Earth and its moon. The blue and green planet looked peaceful from space, giving no hint of the dangerous world that had produced humanity. Council leader Jacques Ara, an ancient being whose species had helped found the Federation 3,000 years ago, called the session to order. Her voice carried the weight of centuries as she spoke. "We are here to vote on the application of the human species for Federation membership," she announced. "The evidence presented over the past weeks has raised serious concerns about their compatibility with galactic civilization." Captain Zethkar stood at the witness platform, his scaled hands trembling slightly as he prepared to give his final report. "Honored Council, after extensive observation, we have determined that humans represent a unique challenge to our understanding of sentient behavior." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several species representatives looked nervous, while others appeared angry. "They are not aggressive in the traditional sense," Zethkar continued. "They do not seek conquest or domination, but their psychological adaptation to constant danger makes them fundamentally different from all known species." Senator Keithall of the Pacifist Coalition stood up, his forearms waving for attention. "Council leader, we cannot allow a species of Deathworld psychopaths into our peaceful society. They could destabilize everything we have built." "They laugh during combat," added Representative Velmora of the Crystal Worlds. "They train their children for violence. They volunteer for dangerous duties that our best warriors avoid." The debate continued for hours. Some species argued that humans were too dangerous, others that they might be valuable allies. The vote seemed likely to reject humanity's application when the chamber's warning system suddenly activated. Red lights flashed as alarms blared throughout the station. Emergency broadcasts began transmitting in all galactic languages. Council leader Jacques Ara's expression turned grave as she received urgent messages from Fleet Command. "Honored representatives," she announced, her voice cutting through the noise. "We have received word that the Devourers have launched a major offensive. 3 systems have already fallen. They are advancing toward the core worlds." The chamber erupted in panic. The Devourers were the galaxy's worst nightmare, a species of raiders who had terrorized civilized worlds for over 1,000 years. Their ships were nearly indestructible, their warriors felt no fear, and they never showed mercy to anyone who opposed them. "How many ships are attacking?" Senator Keithall asked, his voice high with terror. "Initial reports indicate over 200 Devourer vessels," Zaxara replied. Federation defense forces are falling back on all fronts. They estimate the enemy will reach this station within 6 hours. Through the chaos of panicked voices, one calm voice cut through the noise. Council leader, request permission to deploy human defense forces. Everyone turned to see Captain Jake Martinez standing in the observer section. He wore his simple blue uniform and showed no signs of fear or stress. Behind him stood several other humans, all looking relaxed despite the crisis. You have one ship? Representative Velmora scoffed. What could you possibly do against the Devourers? Jake smiled, that same unsettling expression that had disturbed the alien delegation weeks earlier. We'd like to try. The debate that followed was brief, but heated. Many species representatives objected to letting the untested humans face the galaxy's most feared enemy. Others argued that desperate times called for desperate measures. Very well, Council Leader Jacques Zara finally decided. Captain Martinez, you have permission to engage the enemy, but we cannot provide support. Our fleets are retreating to defensive positions around the core worlds. Understood, Jake replied. We'll handle it. The human cruiser Defiant was small compared to most Federation warships, built from Earth steel and powered by fusion reactors that the aliens considered primitive. But as it moved toward the approaching Devourer fleet, something strange happened. In the council chamber, representatives watched the battle through long-range sensors. They expected to see the human ship destroyed within minutes. Instead, they witnessed something that would change galactic history forever. Commander Kate Phillips stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the massive Devourer fleet approach. Around her, the crew worked at their stations with calm efficiency. Someone was humming an old Earth song, and the navigator was telling jokes over the intercom. Looks like about 50 ships in the lead group, reported Lieutenant Ben Taylor, the weapons officer. Should be interesting. Remember what Grandpa used to say about the Pacific War? Kate replied with a grin. When you're outnumbered, you hit them hard and keep moving. The Defiant opened fire at what most species would consider impossible range. Human weapons weren't more advanced than Federation technology, but the crew used them in ways that defied conventional tactics. They flew straight into enemy formations, accepted damage that would make other crews retreat, and kept fighting when any sane species would have surrendered. In the council chamber, alien representatives watched in amazement as the small human ship carved through Devourer forces like they were training targets. The feared enemy warriors, who had never retreated from any battle, began pulling back in confusion. How are they doing this? Whispered Dr. Yathara. Captain Zethkar studied the tactical displays with growing understanding. They're not afraid. The Devourers have ruled through terror for centuries, but these humans actually seem to be enjoying the fight. On the Defiant's bridge, Kate Phillips laughed as another enemy ship exploded. Nice shot, Ben. That reminds me of the stories my great-grandmother used to tell about bomber crews over Germany. Thanks, Commander, Ben replied cheerfully. My great-grandfather was Navy in World War II. He always said the secret was to shoot first and worry about the odds later. The battle continued for 3 hours. The single human ship, supported by nothing but the courage and skill of its crew, systematically destroyed or drove off the entire Devourer advance fleet. When the last enemy vessel retreated into hyperspace, the galaxy fell silent in shock. Commander. Kate returned to the council station with her ship scarred but victorious. As she walked into the chamber, every alien representative stood in stunned respect. How? Council leader Jacques Zara asked simply. Kate shrugged. They weren't that tough once you got past the scary reputation. Reminded me of schoolyard bullies, back home. Act tough until someone stands up to them. But they were the Devourers, Senator Keithall protested. They've conquered entire civilizations. So did the Nazis, Kate replied calmly. So did the Japanese Empire, the Soviet Union, and a dozen other groups back on Earth. Bullies are bullies no matter what planet they come from. You just have to be willing to hit back. The vote on human membership was unanimous, not because the galaxy had overcome its fear of humanity, but because they finally understood what that fear meant. Humans didn't laugh at danger because they were reckless or insane. They laughed because their own history had shown them horrors that made galactic threats seem almost manageable by comparison. A species that had survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and weapons capable of destroying their own planet wasn't going to be intimidated by raiders who had never faced real resistance. The Devourers had ruled through fear, but they had never encountered a species that had learned to find strength in the things that should have destroyed them. As the ceremony concluded and humanity was formally welcomed into the Galactic Federation, Council Leader Jaxara made an announcement that would echo through history. Let it be known throughout the galaxy that Earth's children have joined our community, not as those seeking protection, but as protectors of all who cannot protect themselves. May the stars help any who threaten the peace they now guard. In the years that followed, the galaxy's monsters learned to fear a new sound echoing through space. Not the roar of conquest or the cry of rage, but something far more terrifying to those who ruled through intimidation. The sound of human laughter in the face of impossible odds, backed by the knowledge that whatever the universe could throw at them, they had already survived worse at home.